of you always have to juggle too, so thank you so much. I I am an employee for a company called Platinum Benefit Services. What we do is we help people understand how the government program called Medicaid can pay for long-term care, or subsidize long-term care. So um, why is this relevant to folks in real estate? Uh, because some of the asset protection strategies relate to real estate, we'll kind of focus on that piece where that's most relevant for you guys. And if you can give me a show of hands, can everyone hear me okay? Okay, perfect. Great. So, um, Medicaid is a federal government program, but every state manages it differently. I'm based in Florida, and I'll be talking about the Florida state rules. But just to be aware, because it's a federal program and they disperse the money to the states, it's up to the states to determine what the rules are, to access those monies, so to say. So some of the things that we're going to talk about today may not be relevant in other states, because I don't know about all the 50 states and which strategies can be used in all the 50 states. But for the purposes of this discussion, we'll be talking about Florida. Also, just to properly introduce myself, I myself am not an attorney, but we do a lot of work with attorneys, especially related to asset protection strategies and so forth. So I just want to make sure that you guys know the information that I'm giving you is general and not legal, because I myself am not an attorney. So as mentioned, Medicaid is a federal government program, but every state manages it differently. And the state of Florida prioritizes the benefits to individuals that are in skilled nursing facilities. Are we all pretty familiar with the difference between skilled nursing and assisted living, or would that be helpful to just touch on that?
I'm familiar. Can't speak for others.
Okay. Okay. And the reason why I'm making mention of the different environments that a person is in, because skilled nursing is considered the highest level of care. So it's more like a hospital setting. There's 2 beds to a room, generally speaking. You can pay extra to have private rooms, but just so you're visually starting to understand that skilled nursing is also called rehab, and they used to call them nursing homes, but that's not what they call them much anymore. But that's all the same environment, called skilled nursing facility, and the acronym is SNF. The another type of environment is called assisted living facilities. And that is for people who are more independent. Generally speaking, they can pivot on their own. They can do, they're more independent. They can do more things for each other, or for themselves, I should say. In the state of Florida, because the benefit is prioritized to people in skilled nursing, there's no wait list to obtain the government benefit that can pay for the majority of the care. But in assisted living, it only covers about $1,500 a month, towards the level of care. So the Medicaid benefit in Florida is much better in skilled nursing. And again, it's because it's considered last resort, right? People often are surprised how expensive skilled nursing is. So they mistakenly think that their Medicare insurance pays for that. That is not entirely true. It does pay in the beginning when someone first goes into rehab, because the intent is that they're using it to, quote unquote, get better. So what's happening is the health insurance is looking at the progress notes of the person that's in rehab. And as long as they're incrementally getting better, they'll pay additional days. But what tends to happen is people kind of plateau, right? That this is their new normal. So what the insurance company does is they're looking at the progress notes, and if things start plateauing, they inform the building that the insurance company is going to stop paying in 48 hours. So then it's up to the buildings to inform the families. Are you choosing to hire a company like Platinum Benefit Services to get the Medicaid benefit that will pay the majority of the expense, or are you paying privately to the tune of $12,000 a month, which is generally speaking what skilled nursing facilities cost, or are you taking your loved one home and you're discharging them from the skilled nursing facility? So the reason why I'm talking to all of you about this is because there's a lot of misunderstandings about the Medicaid process. People get scared. Oh, is the government going to take my house? Do I have to sell my house? You know, those kinds of things. The current state rule is a house that is under 730,000 is perfectly protected, meaning Medicaid is not attaching to a primary residence in Florida as long as the house is under 730,000. If the house is over that amount, there are legal strategies to protect the asset that's over the allowable limit. I'll pause there. Any questions at the moment on those pieces? Okay. So let's talk
I,
about what the
I
limits
do
are.
have a
Oh, please.
question.
Great.
My question is if that house, that asset is protected for that person, and let's say the home's in a trust, does it affect the kids once the parent has passed and the home then goes to the kids?
So I heard you say trust, and let me just touch on one thing related to trust. If you're talking about Medicaid qualifications, the trust does need to be irrevocable, and the trust would have had to been set up and funded years prior.
Okay.
Because Medicaid has a 5-year look back period, if the trust was set up too soon, meaning, or too late, I guess is another way to say it, or if the trust was set up as revocable, which most people do because revocable is more flexible, so they lean towards a revocable trust, but that doesn't protect against Medicaid. It has to be irrevocable and set up 5 years prior.
And is that for all
Um,
states or
some
just
of
Florida?
I just know about Florida for sure.
Okay.
The other thing that's worth mentioning about kids and asset transfer, because there is something called a ladybird deed in the state of Florida, which predetermines who you want the property to pass to when the person or both people pass away. So that is a way to transfer the asset and it not trigger disqualification for Medicaid. Um, be What's interesting in the state of Florida related to real estate and Medicaid is a person can actually have multiple homes in this state or another state and still qualify for Medicaid. The state of Florida is actually one of the more forgiving states as far as asset protection strategies. We have a lot of asset protection strategies, meaning someone that doesn't normally qualify for Medicaid because they make too much income or they have too many assets or too many houses, you can actually still qualify for Medicaid, especially if someone's in a skilled nursing environment and you're working with legal authorities to protect the assets. So we're going to talk a little bit about that because assets can be protected within the calendar month that you're trying to obtain Medicaid benefits in the state of Florida. Would it be helpful if I just touch on some of the more popular asset protection strategies related to Medicaid? Again, I'll touch on them from a general description and general pros and cons. But if you're thinking about any individual specifically, or if you're thinking about yourself, you do need to work with an attorney to get the legal and appropriate advice because I myself am not the attorney. But so for a married couple, the asset limit is 157,920. As long as the home equity is under 730,000, then the home doesn't count towards that asset limit. So what that means is it's the combination of the bank accounts, it's stocks, it's bonds, it's CDs, it's gold bars, it's Bitcoin, it's all those things. So if the total is over 157,920, then you need an asset protection strategy to protect everything over that limit. If you're under the limit, then you can qualify for Medicaid based on the assets being under the limit. So it's a little bit easier there. But let's just say that the person has $1 million in bank accounts, and they have a property in Florida, but the property is under 730,000. They can still qualify for Medicaid as long as they're working with an attorney on an asset protection strategy. One of the examples of an asset protection strategy is called a personal services contract. It's basically an employment agreement between the individual that needs the Medicaid and, let's say, a child. You can transfer the assets into the child's name, and in exchange, the child is signing an employment agreement that's saying something along the lines of, my dad is hiring me to oversee his affairs. He's making a one-time transfer to me. That is my compensation for overseeing his affairs. And then we can show on paper that the dad is under the asset limit, so we can get Medicaid for the dad. Um, this personal services contract, pros and cons, it's easy as far as paperwork goes. The con is, in this example, the son is supposed to report that as income to him, so he'd have to pay taxes on that money that was transferred. So a lot of people don't like that option for that reason, because of the tax ramifications of the personal services contract. So sometimes people choose something called a promissory note instead. So this is a second strategy. It's basically a loan. So dad, in this example, can loan son the money on the maximum term allowable, which is only 1 year for the state of Florida Medicaid rules. So he can loan that money. So we do need to show the transfer of the money into the son's name. In exchange, the son is signing a contract called a called a promissory note, basically saying he's receiving the funds on a loan. Um, Forgive me for saying it like this, but if dad passes away during the year, then nothing needs to happen. The money's already in the son's name, and that's the end of it. Whereas if dad is still alive next year, you have to redo the loan to extend it out another year. So there's some costs associated with that, with redoing the loan. It's a little bit more of a pain as far as paperwork goes, but because there's no tax ramification, because it's a loan, some people choose that one. There's another one that works for couples that are married. It's kind of an ugly name, so sorry to say it, but that's just the name of the rule, and it's called spousal refusal. It's a just say no strategy. So basically, let's say one's in skilled nursing and one is in at home. The the spouse that's at home can have all the assets in their name only, and we do need to show the transfer of the money in their name only, because both in the couple are signing a document that says we as a couple need Medicaid for one of us, but not the other one. And that's why we're moving all the assets into the other one's name, because this one needs the assets to live off of for their long life that they're living outside of a skilled nursing facility. And then we can show on paper that the one that's in the skilled nursing facility has access to less than $2,000. And that's an asset limit. Their income, it doesn't matter what their income is, because it doesn't count in the month that it's deposited. But the asset limit, I need to show that the one that needs Medicaid has access to only $2,000. And then the fourth one, this is the one that piques the interest a lot of time of real estate, because it's a real estate play, basically. This is an allowable strategy in Florida, but it's not necessarily allowable in other states. But it is called family equity bond. And let's say in this example, there's a couple, they have a house in Florida, it's under that 730 limit, but they've got $1 million in assets that need protection. They are allowed to use the money that's over that 158,000 to buy into a partial interest in another property, say the kid's property. So this is a little bit complicated to explain. Let me run through it and then I'll come back for questions. But basically, they're allowed to use, let's just use simple math. They're allowed to use 800,000 to buy into the kid's property, even if it's in another state, at a partial interest. And then they have to list their partial interest up for sale. So the ad reads something like 50% of a home in Idaho is up for sale for this dollar amount. There's an existing family that lives in the property. They have a lifelong lease. They pay no rent or mortgage. and you, the new owner, are going to be responsible for 20% of the lawn maintenance and the snow removal and the insurance and blah, blah, blah. If you want in on this great deal, give us a call. You want to guess how many calls that people get for that kind of ad? um, so it, but what's interesting about it is it's an allowable way for someone who's not normally going to be able to qualify for Medicaid in Florida because they have too much asset. But because Florida does allow multiple homes to be owned and still qualify for Medicaid as long as the house is listed for sale at fair market value, and that includes the partial interest. So that's what, that loophole there, or is rented for fair market value. The problem with the rental is that income now counts as income for the person that's in the skilled nursing. So sometimes you don't want to do that. But it's an interesting strategy that's allowable in Florida. That's a real estate play. So I'll pause there just to see if there's any questions on that.
I have no questions. You're really thorough. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. It's a bit of a language specialty, right? I have very few superpowers in the world, but I understand this stuff well, and I'm happy to help people navigate. And I'll make sure that I include my contact information because I'm happy to get information for other states or connect you with a specialist in another state, if that can be helpful to you or your families. One of the biggest things that I witness is because people get caught off guard how expensive skilled nursing is, and because so many people did not purchase long-term care insurance to help them with some of these expenses later in life, this Medicaid program becomes a lot more interesting to people, especially when you realize you still can qualify even if you're over the income limit and over the asset limit. So pause there for a moment and ask Jessica if she wants to do Q&A or how I can be most helpful. I don't want to overwhelm people with too many of the bits and the bytes.
You are doing
And I
excellent
think I
as
just saw someone
always,
post.
Hillary. I just
Oh, thank you, Linda.
You're welcome. I just put in the chat Hillary's contact information. Um so it has phone numbers, all that, everything in there for her. And then we will be posting this, of course. It's up on YouTube, and then we'll be doing clips and everything, and then the full recording of this will go on our website as always. Does anybody have any questions or any wins of the week that anybody would like to talk about?
I just clicked on to your link. I have a class starting at 8, so I know I don't have any to prolong time, and I know you're in the car and traveling and want to respect that. But you definitely have a different language that needs to be understood, and I think being in the middle 50s is a good introduction for me hearing this.
Absolutely. A lot of times people get Medicare and Medicaid mixed up, and I use a little trick that might be helpful. Medicare ends in CARE, and that's healthcare insurance. Medicaid, which ends in AID, is financial aid. So by getting Medicaid, which is a financial aid, you're not giving up Medicare. You keep Medicare because Medicare pays doctors and hospitals. So even if you're in skilled nursing, sometimes a healthcare thing comes up that you have to go back to the hospital. So it's your Medicare, your health insurance that pays the hospital. And then when you go back to the skilled nursing facility, it's Medicaid that pays that bill.
I like that
Hmm.
acronym. And then how do you, what type of lawyers are involved with who you work with?
Yeah, so there are attorneys that specialize in Medicaid qualifications, just like there's attorneys that qualify and or that specialize in different kinds of law. So not all attorneys do all law, right? There's different specialties. Medicaid is a specialty in and of itself. The Medicaid manual is about yay high. And there's a lot of if then but or kind of language.
Right.
Yeah, so usually you can Google search Medicaid specialists or Medicaid attorneys to find someone that knows. That said, the volume is important. So asking them, what's the volume of applications that they're putting through is important. Sometimes attorneys just give you the legal documents. They actually don't do the filing themselves. So they're handing you legal documents and you're trying to figure out how to submit the application and defend yourself. So just be aware if you are hiring an attorney to do the application, make sure you understand if they're also doing the Medicaid filing as well, or just giving you the documents and expecting you to do it.
I had just met a lady this week who does home warranty, and she came up to me and told me she was also certified to, I guess, sell Medicaid. Does that sound right?
Maybe she's licensed to sell health insurance. So someone who sells health insurance is licensed as a Medicare licensed insurance person.
Okay, that wasn't how she approached me, so it must be my silver hair. Because I thought,
Medicare
okay, I
is a
don't know
health.
where to go with that.
Yep, not to worry.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. So, certified selling insurance, and that's a deep in and of itself. That's your own language for sure.
Yes, it is. Yes. Yes, it is. And that perhaps is another conversation for another day, because I'd love the opportunity to talk through that as well with a different presentation. But I'll ask Felicia and Jessica if I might have the opportunity in the future, because there are some interesting things related to life insurance that can be done to assist in real estate. But again, it's a separate presentation that I don't have prepared right now. So I'd love the opportunity to talk about that another time.
That would be great.
Sure.
Well, thank you very much. I know, 30 minutes is the top, so I want to respect that. Thank you.
Thank you. Be well. Oh, happy selling.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Have a great day.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. It was great. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you guys on Friday.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.